Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on capital markets. So we have with us Dr. Aditya Srinivas, who will be taking us through this talk today. And today, the session is going to be on monetary policy and its implications. So I'll give you introduction of Dr. Srinivas. Dr. Aditya Srinivas is a capital market and financial markets professional with specialization in macroeconomics and fundamental research. He is the Chief Operating Officer of BSE Brokers Forum, and he has 17 years of corporate experience in the field of financial services with complete knowledge about all the segments of the capital markets and financial products. We are very fortunate to have him over here today in the midst of us, and he has been conducting these sessions for the past 2-3 weeks now. And today he will be talking on monetary policy and its implication. I invite Dr. Srinivas to take over the session and enlighten us with his views. Thank you. Dr. Srinivas, over to you.
Yes, sir. Sure. Friends, very good evening to all of you. Today's topic is very interesting, friends. It is related to what I can say monetary policy. See, monetary policy has its own implications, and we will try to understand how it affects not only from an Indian perspective, but also from global perspective, and how it plays a vital role in creating movements in the stock market. So I have a small PPT to share. So just give me 20-25 minutes. I will share the PPT, and then basically we will go with the Q&A part. If we talk of basically the monetary policy framework, if we talk now, then monetary policy comes under Reserve Bank of India. See, so that is why RBI plays a very, very vital and a critical role, correct? So RBI is the main body which basically frames the monetary policy. Now, there are two main objectives of monetary policy. First is to control inflation, and second is to ensure that the GDP of the country rises. So these two instruments are very important, these two objectives, to control inflation and to ensure that GDP rises. Now, at times what happens is that basically in order to achieve one objective, sometimes the other gets compromised. Nevertheless, inflation and interest rates, they go hand in hand, and that is why these two parameters are very vital when it comes to designing a monetary policy. So we'll try to understand each one of them. See, as far as monetary policy is concerned, there are four main instruments through which this policy is implemented. The first is called as a repo rate. See, repo rate is the rate at which RBI lends to commercial banks. So currently it is at 4%. Repo rate is right now at a 10 years low, friends. Yes, we are having one of the lowest interest rate regimes, for the simple reason that before this COVID-19 came, RBI drastically reduced the interest rates by 70 to 100 basis points, and that is why you find repo rate at 4%. Repo rate is the main instrument of monetary policy, friends, because repo rate is the rate at which RBI lends money to commercial banks. Correct? RBI lends money to commercial banks, so that is called as a repo rate. Now here typically what will happen is that basically when RBI lends money to commercial banks, so if RBI increases repo rate, banks in turn will charge more interest from banks in turn will charge more interest rates from the customer. So that is why repo rate plays a very, very vital and a critical role. Second is reverse repo rate. See, what is reverse repo rate? It is the rate at which banks will keep surplus cash with RBI, and basically RBI pays 3.35% interest, correct? So that is typically called as a reverse repo rate. But frankly speaking, banks would not prefer keeping their money under reverse repo because they get only 3.35%. Rather, if they lend this money in a housing loan, they will be getting 6.8%. So obviously, reverse repo does not make any much sense. Third and fourth instruments are cash reserve ratio, statutory liquidity ratio, which primarily deals with liquidity. So cash reserve ratio is one which will basically which is primarily related to controlling liquidity in the system. So basically cash reserve ratio is right now at 4%. Here the money which is kept by banks with RBI, on this RBI does not pay them any interest. So that is called as a cash reserve ratio. And finally, we have statutory liquidity ratio, where there is a compulsory investment in government bonds and securities. There is compulsory investments. So that is called as statutory liquidity ratio, friends. Clear? That is called a statutory liquidity ratio. And basically, if you see, that is investments in government bonds and securities, it is at 21.5%. So if you actually see, then per 100 rupee, per every 100 rupee of the banks, that is 21.5 and 4. So 25 and a half rupees is lying with RBI. In a way, it is a measure to control liquidity moving into the system. So when RBI feels that there is high liquidity, it will increase the cash reserve ratio and statutory liquidity ratio in order to reduce liquidity. And at the same time, if it feels that there is a need to inject liquidity in the system, it will reduce this ratio. So that is why these instruments of monetary policy are very important, friends. However, out of the four, the most important is repo rate. If we talk of two important variables, that is inflation and interest rate, friends, because these two together frame the monetary policy framework. So here inflation is the independent variable and interest rates are dependent variable. So when inflation rises in the economy, then RBI increases interest rates, and when inflation falls in the economy, then RBI reduces the interest rates. So this is something very important, and both of them tend to have a positive correlation. So if inflation rises, RBI will increase interest rate. If inflation falls, RBI will reduce interest rates. So that is something very critical, very important. Here, please understand that they both are positively correlated, and that is why inflation data is very, very important. As I told you, friends, that repo rate is the main instrument of monetary policy. So typically what happens is when repo rate rises, RBI will increase the interest rates in the economy. And when interest rates rise in the economy, it means both rates will rise, FD and loans. So FDs will start giving more interest and loans will become more costly. Correct. That is something very important. As far as loans are concerned, friends, when the loan rate basically goes up in the economy, at times economy basically slows down. Correct. The economy basically slows down. Economy will primarily slow down. So that is something again very, very important, friends, because typically what happens is in India we have large chunk of middle class population. Correct, we have large chunk of middle class population. So as a result, what will happen is that when middle class people sees that their EMI is rising, they tend to take lesser loans, and as a result, obviously the economy slows down. If we talk of monetary policy, then what will happen is, friends, that when RBI increases repo rate, then typically banks will have to pay more interest to RBI. So banks in turn will charge more interest from customers. Now, when the EMI on housing loan, car loan basically goes up, obviously obviously what will happen is that demand and consumption will fall, because what will happen is when loans become costly, the demand for housing loan, car loan and other capital goods loan goes down. On the other hand, from an industrial perspective, when basically interest rate rises, corporates tend to avoid taking loans. So when corporate tends to avoid taking loans, that will also basically create an issue. So as a result, you will find the demand and consumption in the economy goes down because loan rates basically rise. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. Here I have taken a real life example, friends, that between 2010 to 13, when inflation had reached double digits, at that particular point of time, what had happened was inflation was around 12%. This was during the third in government of Dr. Manmohan Singh, when inflation in their second term was around 12%. So at that time, what RBI had done was it kept on increasing the repo rate from 5.25% to 8%. So when repo rate kept on increasing, basically what happened was FD started giving 9.25% and loans became 11%. Correct, loans had become 11%. Now, when loans became 11%, obviously that resulted in destruction of automobile sector, real estate and infrastructure companies because lakhs of jobs were lost. Here, friends, please understand that as far as our economy is concerned, EMI is the main source of finance for large number of middle class population. So when they feel basically that interest rates are rising, they tend to avoid basically what I can say, they tend to avoid taking loans and other things. So when they tend to avoid, obviously economy primarily slows down and that creates an issue. In fact, because of all these things, in December 2013, the GDP of the country had crashed to 4.6%. This was the lowest at that time in last 10 years. The reason was because interest rates had become so high that even the infrastructure companies who had taken interest burden on them. So that had created huge amount of problem. If you see during COVID-19, the current scenario, friends, in current scenario, what has happened is that basically RBI reduced the interest rates. RBI reduced interest rates drastically, that is the repo rate to 4%. But even then, the corporate demand for loans has not picked up. That is really a cause of worry because corporates are still not confident about the economy becoming normal. There is huge uncertainty in economy plus crores of job losses. So that has basically created a problem, and hence individuals and corporates even right now are not taking loans or are not confident to take loan in spite of low rates of interest. So that is something we have to, friends, keep it in mind. That is what is basically causing trouble in the economy because large number of people, if we see, have lost their jobs or there has been a salary cut. So because of this particular reason, primarily what is happening is that loans are not being taken, and that is why, in spite of low interest rates regime, things are not falling in place. If you see current interest rates, then FD is right now giving around 5.15% and home loan rates are around at 6.9%, correct? So we have one of the lowest interest rates as far as levels in economy. The objective is that government wants demand and consumption to pick up because of low interest rates. But frankly speaking, unfortunately, that is not happening in the economy because there is lot of pressure related to jobs, salary cuts, and other things. So because of those things, the things are not falling in the perspective as they should have. And unfortunately, the second wave, which has now started rising all over India, and basically again lockdown and then reduced timing of businesses, shutdown of school colleges. So that may create another pressure in the economy, which is trying to revive. It is yet not out of woods, but trying to revive. If we talk of global monetary policy, then yes, globally interest rates have drastically come down, and the whole objective, even at the global level, was to create demand and consumption. That was the whole objective, to create demand and consumption in the economy, and that is why globally interest rates, they basically tried to brought it down. If we talk of USA, then basically interest rates are at 0.25%. UK, it is at 0.5%. Europe, it is at 0.5%. Japan, we are already having negative interest rates. So if we talk of this global monetary policy, Arab world is around 3 to 4%. So basically, if we talk of global interest rates, global monetary policy, then yes, they are drastically at a low level. Now, basically, the whole objective of global central banks was to push the economy back on, world economy back on track. But to be very frank, friends, in 2020, if you take the whole year of 2020, the GDP growth has been minus 4.4%. Now, this slide is very, very critical and important, friends. See, as far as effect of global monetary policy is concerned, the biggest effect creator is US, that is US Federal Reserve. So basically what US Federal Reserve does is that whenever it reduces interest rates, globally there is a spur of liquidity and Indian markets also go up. For example, if you see just 2 days back, Fed has made a clear statement that by 2023, till 2023, they are not going to touch interest rates. So one thing is clear, that globally, even for one more year, interest rates will be on the lower side. In 2020, if we see, friends, Then foreign institutional investors, they invested 1,68,000 crore rupees in Indian stock market, 1,68,000 crore. So that was a huge amount that has come into Indian stock markets from FIIs, and most of that money basically comes from USA. So this particular point is very vital, that when US monetary policy is loose, interest rates are low, lot of money primarily comes down in our markets. On the other hand, when it increases interest rates, then basically money goes out. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. Always remember, friends, that US interest rates are the key trigger. So when US reduces interest rates, globally stock markets go up because liquidity gets spurred in. And when US increases interest rates, dollar starts going back to USA, and globally stock markets fall. So that is why US monetary policy plays a very, very critical and a vital aspect. As far as our monetary policy is concerned, friends, if we talk of our monetary policy, then these three sectors tend to have a negative relationship: real estate, automobile, and infrastructure. These three typical sectors, friends, where in real estate in India, 95% of the houses are sold on loans. In automobiles, 90% of the houses are sold on loans. And in infrastructure companies, obviously the expansion happens through loan capital. So here typically what happens is that when we basically interest rate goes up, these sectors will always see their sales reducing. And when interest rates falls in the economy, they will see basically the demand rising, because this all these sectors are interest rate sensitive sectors. They are typically interest rate sensitive sectors. So basically what happens is, when things are relatively okay, interest rates are low, then in that particular case, basically you will always find economies improving. And when interest rate rises, you will typically find economies have facing slight slowdown because of the composition of population. See, we have maximum population in the old age, in the middle class category, because we have large chunk of middle class people. They will always use EMI, that is home loan, car loan, capital goods loan, and that basically what creates a pressure. Because when you decide to take a loan, the first thing you do is calculate an EMI. So that is something very vital, very effective. Why monetary policy is so important in India? As I just mentioned, okay, we have around 70% in the middle class population. See, the rich class is 1 to 2%, and basically they are not bothered what the interest rates are, because whatever may be the rates, they will go and buy it out. As far as around 28% to 25% are below poverty line, and probably that figure may have increased after COVID-19. For them, again, basically, interest rate does not matter, because even at low interest rates, they are not in a position to buy. So typically, the 70% middle class population plays a very, very vital role. Correct. That is something very important. So if we basically try to buy a house, a car, anything, they calculate EMI. So basically, when they calculate EMI, they will primarily come to know that what kind of interest outgo they are going to face. So that is something very, very important. So always remember that if interest rates they find are on the higher side, then basically they will postpone their decision to buy. So when they postpone their decision to buy, ultimately demand and consumption in the economy will fall. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. That is why monetary policy plays a very, very vital role as far as our economy is concerned. Now we will take three scenarios. See what will happen if interest rates are too low. See, always remember, if interest rates are drastically made low, then in that case, lot of people will try to take loans. And when we try to take a lot of loans, ultimately what will happen is those who are not eligible or less eligible will also try to take loan. As a result, there are more chances of default. Correct. The default chances will become very high, and that basically creates a problem. Correct. That typically will create a bubble situation what had happened in basically 2008, the same housing crash in USA, because in that time US also reduced the interest rates from 5% to 1%, correct? They also reduced the interest rates from 5% to 1%. In that particular case, every Tom, Dick and Harry had applied for a loan, and that basically created a problem in the system. So this is something we have to, friends, keep it in mind. As far as basically interest rates are concerned, too low interest rates also does not help, because large chunk of people who are not eligible will apply and will finally create an asset bubble. What will happen if interest rates are too high? The reverse thing. If interest rates are typically too high, then eligible and strong people will also hesitate to take loans. See, for the simple reason that if interest rates are too high, then corporates don't expand. And if corporates don't expand, obviously new job opportunities don't get created in the economy, and obviously the economy slows down. So always remember that too liberal monetary policy and at the same time too difficult monetary policy, both will also not suffice anything. So basically one needs to have a balanced monetary approach. Balanced monetary policy means, typically, what do we mean by balanced monetary policy? It simply means that we should have a monetary policy framework where interest rates are neither too low nor too high. To be very frank, FDs in the range of 7 to 7.5%, loans in the range of 8%. Correct. If we are basically within that range, we will be able to see that credit demand also takes place, and those who are capable to repay loans will only take loans. So that is something very important, correct? So when interest rates are moderate, then only sound people will, with repayment capacity, will take loan, and plus they will pay the loan effectively because they are financially sound. So this will create a proper credit demand culture, and plus overall things, it would be okay. So this is something we have to keep it in mind. So with this, friends, I complete my part of the presentation, and now we can go for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srinivas, for your enlightening talk. I'm sure our participants have understood some amount of the monetary policy and all that we follow. So we'll go to the question and answer section. So we have one from Mr. Abu Talha. He says, if we buy any company share, what parameter must be analyzed?
If we buy company share, okay. See, if you basically buy company share, then two things are very vital. See, whenever you are buying a company share, now please understand that net profit of the company has to go up. That is very, very vital. Net profit on a quarterly basis, that is a main area of focus. And second is zero debt equity ratio. The lesser the debt in the company, the more probability is of success. So zero debt equity ratio and basically rising net profit, these two things are something very vital and important, correct? Rising net profit and zero debt equity ratio, these two things are something very important. So if these two things, if you are confident that net profit on a quarter basis is rising, and at the same time there is zero debt capital, then in that case you can always basically buy that particular stock. So that will be something very good. These two parameters, something which we need to be cautious about.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya. The next question that I see is from Mr. Laik Ali Khan. What is the term of monetary policy in India? How and when it is changed or amended?
See, monetary policy framework, every 2 months RBI basically announces the interest rates every 2 months. So it is a biannual, bi-monthly monetary policy. So every 2 months basically RBI comes out with its stand on inflation, and if the inflation data is rising, then basically it tries to increase the interest rates, and if the inflation data is falling, then it will basically reduce the interest rate. So basically that CPI inflation plays a vital role in the formation of monetary policy. That is something very important.
बल्क व्हाट्सएप चालू है
हाँ तो मैं ना लिंक भेज देती हूँ इसकी, क्योंकि वो लिंक शेयर नहीं किया मैंने
फेसबुक लाइव की। अच्छा, आपको भेजना है ऐसे?
तो आप भेज दीजिए आपके नंबर से, मैं आपको
ओके, तो ये अभी ये चालू है तभी करना है, क्योंकि अभी ये तो खत्म हो गया है। सेशन खत्म हो गया है तो उसमें भी भेजे अपन अपना लीडरशिप ग्रुप में, तो दैट इज सफिशिएंट।
आज उसमें तो जाएंगे वो सारे लोग।
नहीं सर, स्टूडेंट को जाने चाहिए ऐसे बोला है।
तो लेकिन लाइव भेज के अभी मतलब नहीं है, लाइव तो खत्म होने आया है।
उसको तो परेशान कर देना है दुनिया।
सर अभी 8 ही बजना, 8:30
थैंक यू सर।
Okay, sir. We go next question, sir.
Right. The next question is from Abdullah Sheikh. Why government increases or decreases repo rates?
See, basically, whenever interest rate rises, whenever inflation rises in the economy, then in order to control inflation, government will increase the repo rate. So whenever inflation rises, government increases the repo rate. Whenever inflation reduces, government decreases the repo rate. The whole objective of repo rate is to increase or decrease the cost of capital so as to control inflation. So that is something very important. So when basically interest rate rises in the economy, then in that particular case, when interest rate inflation rises, repo rate is increased, and when inflation falls, repo rate is decreased. So that particular thing we have to keep it in mind. Yes, the next question is, sir, can you take the next question?
Certainly, certainly. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. The next question that we have is from Naseem Akhtar Saab, and he wants to know, kindly explain more about the monetary and fiscal policy and their correlation and impact on the economy.
See, basically, monetary policy deals with, monetary policy, the whole objective is controlling money supply and inflation, whereas the fiscal policy basically deals with the budget. So monetary and fiscal policy, they both have different framework. Obviously, fiscal policy, that is budget, has a larger impact because budget affects various segments of the society, various sectors of the society. Correct. Plus, budget is an allocation of financial resources to various sectors, whereas monetary policy focus is to just see that money supply is okay and inflation is under control or not. And in order to control inflation, they just increase or decrease the interest rates. So obviously, fiscal policy has much greater impact on monetary rather than monetary policy. Fiscal policy is the budget which is announced on 1st February by finance minister, whereas monetary policy every 2 months is basically handled by the RBI governor. So that is the difference.
Thank you very much. There's one from Mr. Abdullah Sheikh. He wants to know why government increases or decreases repo rates.
Sir, that we did, I think. Sir, that question already answered.
Oh, it is answered. I'm so sorry. I probably thought that.
No problem, sir.
Okay. The next one is from an anonymous participant. He wants to know, is the monetary policy and fiscal policy the same? I think you have already answered that also.
Yes, no, they are different. Yes.
Right. Okay. Another one is, can you please suggest some content or course that beginners can go through to understand stock markets?
See, that we will definitely through AMP, we will launch a course for beginners of stock market. We will definitely launch a course.
Sure. So once the series of sessions are done, then in collaboration with Dr. Aditya Srinivas, we will be launching that course. So until then, I think you will have to wait, and we will be informing all the participants. And today I've also shared the link of the WhatsApp group that we have created, wherein Dr. Srinivas will also be present to answer any queries other than.
Yes, sir, sure.
So I've already shared the link in the chat today. Okay. The next one that I can see from Mr. Mashuk Khan is that they say top 1% in India have most capital. How to decrease this gap?
See, that is, sir, the whole problem. Actually, unfortunately, the whole problem is that India's 4% of population controls 60% of India's wealth. In fact, World Bank in its report has told that India is one of the countries with highest income inequality. So obviously, that is a huge issue as far as India is concerned. See, to be very frank, we don't have problem of financial resources. The problem is of distribution. See, few people controlling huge wealth, but unfortunately, they don't distribute their wealth for welfare of the people or basically don't help others. So that is where the whole problem is. Clear? That is where the whole issue is.
Right. So it's more about government policy than anything
Yes,
else.
sir. Yes, exactly.
Right. Thanks very much. There's one from Mr. Laik Ali Khan. He wants to know whether ever in the Indian history, Indian rupee has dominated US dollar, or can we expect it in
No,
future?
no. So we unfortunately, sir, if you see in the last 10 years, rather we have depreciated by more than 100%. See, basically, if we want to make Indian rupee much stronger, we will have to go with the FDI flows, foreign direct investment. That is something very critical, very important. We need to go with the FDI flow, that is foreign direct investment, where basically we allow the companies to set up their offices here and they pay proper tax. See, in case of FII, typically what happens is, in case of FIIs, basically they invest in stock market and they withdraw also quickly. So that is called as hot money. So that does not serve any purpose. Plus, it does not even create jobs at the grassroots level. So if we want to really make this economy more strong and rupee more stable and appreciating, we need to go with the FDI flow. That is something very important. Foreign direct investment. That will actually suffice all the problems.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. The next question that we have is, where does printing new currencies come into picture? On what premise or what basis does government print new currencies? Dr. Srinivas, did you get the
Sir,
question?
yes, sir, sir. Basically, yes. Where does printing new currency comes into picture, and what does government print new currency? See, basically, Mohammed sir, if you see now, printing of currency was done after demonetization. Basically, whenever demonetization kind of activity takes place, the old currency is wiped off and the new currencies are printed. And if I understand, in Nasik there is a printing press of the government now. But when you print currency, you also need to have proportionately gold reserves. See, typically, if you see US economy prints currency for the simple reason it's a global currency. So it is not bounded by those gold deposit norms with IMF, whereas other countries are bounded by such norms. So basically, in case of other countries and even in case of India, new printing of currency hardly takes place for the simple reason that if you keep on printing currency, what will happen is, if you keep on printing currency, then in that case your rupee devalues and inflation goes up in the economy. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. So that is why printing of new currency notes, if done in case of demonetization and other things, otherwise in normal case, country like us or even in general other countries don't print their currency excessively, except for the US. If you see US, whenever there is a global problem or an economic issue, they simply go with quantitative easing and they print currency.
Thanks very much. We have a question from Shadab Kate. He wants to know what should be the ideal difference between the inflation rate and the repo rate.
See, basically, see, there is nothing like an ideal difference. Basically, inflation rate, what RBI has done is that they have kept base inflation rate of 4% plus minus 2%. So the range of inflation is between 2 to 6%. That is what is the comfort zone of RBI. Now, if you see last Friday only, the inflation data has come to 5.03. So inflation has gone up from 4.03 to 5.03. Now, if it closes down to 6% or above that, that will obviously create pressure in the economy. So that is why inflation rate one needs to be cautious about. As far as repo rate is concerned, repo rate depends upon inflation data. Right now, repo rate is less for the simple reason. Right now, repo rate is less because basically due to COVID-19, government had reduced the repo rate so that cost of capital is low in the economy. So that is why they had basically reduced it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
There's a query from Mr. Masruf Khan. He wants to know why government wants to lose the majority shareholdings it has in many PSUs.
No, please understand, sir, that government is not losing any majority shareholding. In fact, government is just selling out 10 to 15% of its share. And mind well, all government companies, till government holds 51%, either central government or state government or jointly, it is still called a government company only, and it will be able to take all decisions. Here government is disinvesting. Disinvesting means it is selling certain part of its holding and basically reducing certain parts of its holding in order to generate revenue because of fiscal deficit issues. So that is what government is trying to focus on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shimas. Now, there's one from Maruf Aftab. He wants to know, from now onwards, the COVID cases rises and institutional investors are selling due to the USA bond yield rise. How do you see Nifty responding?
See, basically, if you see, to be very frank, na, see, right now, there is the biggest fear in stock market is basically whether we are heading for another lockdown and basically what if this COVID keeps on rising. Unfortunately, yes, that is the biggest fear as of now. So as if you basically see these next 2 months, I feel markets tend to have more of a downward bias rather than upward because till June, there is no other trigger than monsoon. It is only monsoon which can basically magnify and make things all right. So that is something we have to, friends, keep it in mind. So that is something very important as far as basically the markets are concerned. So next 2-3 months, the best strategy could be that whenever there is a fall in the market, it is better to buy blue chip stocks. That is, I had told earlier also that stock Reliance, SDFC, ICICI, SBI, Infosys, the top-notch companies can be accumulated during any fall. That would be a more better strategy for next 2 to 3 months.
Thank you very much. There's one question from Mr. Naseem Akhtar. He says, kindly explain some things about government borrowing to bridge deficit financing.
See, basically what happens, Nasim sir, okay, whenever government borrows, so what government does, government tells RBI to issue bonds and banks are asked to invest in their bonds, correct? So that is how government tries to borrow. Now, right now, what has happened, basically, the deficit financing has gone up, fiscal deficit primarily. Why fiscal deficit went up was because during this whole year, during this entire 2020, if you see, government had to announce 20 lakh crore rupees of economic package to fight with this COVID-19. Now, because government had to announce this economic package, it basically created an issue for the overall working of the government because fiscal deficit shot up to 9.5%. It is expected to be 6.8%. It is expected to be 6.8% in the next month. So that is something, friends, we have to keep it in mind. So as far as deficit financing is concerned, that government is now focusing on to increase this GST collection, one, and second, basically government is of the view that when economic progress is, more tax collection will happen. In order to even augment that, government has come with this disinvestment program and the target has been kept of around 1.75 lakh crore rupees so that government can basically reduce this deficit, fiscal deficit, because globally if fiscal deficit keeps on rising, then international investors will not be comfortable.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
The next question that I can see is from Mr. Suyog Patil. He wants to know, does investing in bond market make sense in India since very less trading of bonds occur in our country?
No. Basically, Suyog sir, just to correct you, it is not like that. There is a huge, vibrant bond market also in India, but the only thing is that that market is primarily controlled by banks, financial institutions. For retail investors, even you can invest in the bond market, but the minimum ticket size is 10 lakh rupees. So because of that higher ticket size, typically retail investors don't find it attractive. And second, brokers, the margins in bond market is extremely thin. So basically, brokers are also not that much involved. So that is something we have to keep it in mind. Otherwise, we do have a very huge bond market. Please don't underestimate that. And please also understand that foreign institutional investors, FII, they invest in a very huge way in Indian bond markets for the simple reason that even a normal FD of 5%, 5.15% return attracts them because in their countries, the interest is hardly 0.25 to 0.5%. So for them, even 5% fixed return is a very huge thing.
Great. Thank you so much. There's one from an anonymous attendee. He wants to know how much currency notes RBI puts in the economy. Is there any percentage of GDP etc.?
That no, I don't think there is a percentage of GDP, but if I am not wrong, then in demonetization, 15 lakh 44,000 crore rupees were withdrawn. So same amount was re-injected in the form of new notes of 2,500. So basically, around 15 lakh crore rupees, you can say, is in circulation.
Okay, thank you very much. There's one from Ashok Khan. He wants to know what effect do we see in long term with the IPOs of important government companies such as LIC, etc.
Basically, LIC bringing an IPO will definitely have positive impact because one, it will create more professional impact in the company since it will be a listed entity. Since it will be a listed entity, the accountability will go up. Plus, institutional investors will basically buy that particular stock. So when institutional investors buy that stock, obviously it will be listed on the stock exchange. There will be more discussion about that company, and things will be in much better zone. So it will be useful from the for the company's perspective also. Second, investors will get a good opportunity to invest in an IPO like LIC. That is second important thing. And finally, if you take basically government will get a huge chunk of revenue from this investment because LIC is valued at around 8 to 10 lakh crore. So even if they divest 10%, 80,000 crore rupees will come to them.
Thanks very much, sir. Right. Now, the next question is from Mr. Laik Ali Khan. Government of India is privatizing certain government enterprise. I think this would be similar to the question on LIC.
Sir, yes, can you please repeat that? What is
Yeah,
government of India?
Government of India is privatizing certain government enterprises. How this move is beneficial for the public?
Basically, there is a plan of government to privatize certain banks. Is the whole objective here is that when you privatize, the professionalism increases because obviously when private investors chip in, they will ask for more profitability, they will ask for more accountability, correct? So when that particular thing happens, obviously efficiency, effectiveness goes up. So that is why privatizing something is very important. Plus it helps public because public will get more professional services and accountability will also increase. So obviously it helps overall in the economy. Plus when an institute is privatized, the recruitment and other things also become more professional, more fast. So obviously it's a win-win situation.
Sorry, there's a follow-up question to that. What after government disinvests in everything? Disinvests everything.
Basically, government, this investment list is too long. Even still, there are more than 250 PSUs which are with the government and left for divestment. Yes, if everything is divested, then ultimately we are on the road to USA. That means everything will be controlled by private entities. So obviously, in a country like India, that may have its own implications because the point is that if you divest everything, then in that case, everything will be controlled by private entities, which, to be very frank, may not augur well because in private entities, profit is the sole objective. So the human face of reforms and other thing goes away. So that is something which can definitely harm the economy from a social perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Abdullah Sheikh wants to know what are your views on cryptocurrency?
See, cryptocurrency is nothing but a Ponzi scheme, what I understand. See, a currency cannot be so much volatile. It is going to, if I'm not wrong, before 2 months, it was at $20,000, then it went to 50,000, now at 60, it again comes to 52. So it is not at all a currency. How can a currency be so volatile? Number one. Number two, basically, is it backed by any sovereign government or a central bank? No. So as far as cryptocurrency is concerned, I think basically it is nothing but a Ponzi scheme, and the day that basically balloon burst, it will result in a lot of people losing their hard-earned money. As far as India is concerned, government has already made up a mind to bring up in the parliament session a bill which will ban holding any kind of digital currency except for that launched by RBI. As of now, RBI is not so keen in launching its own digital currency, but in case if it is launched, then the only digital currency which will be valid is which is backed by RBI. So that is something we have to keep it in mind.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. There is a query from Mr. Mashupan. He says, how does volatility come in certain markets?
See, volatility basically is the basic nature of the market, and please understand that markets work on one simple concept of demand and supply. So, if there are more buyers, obviously the market will go up, and if there are more sellers, market will come down. So, please understand that volatility will always be there, whether it is equity market, derivatives market, or any other kind of market. So, it will always be there, and it is the basic nature of the market. Why we say fixed deposit is safe? Because there is no volatility. You are very well assured of what return you are going to get. So that is why volatility plays a vital role.
Thanks very much, sir. There's a question from Mr. Shahbaz Alam. He wants to know how does monetary policy affects microfinance sectors and how monetary policy impact mutual funds.
See, basically, as far as mutual funds are concerned, to be very frank, monetary policy, if the interest rate goes up, obviously people would prefer to go for safe investments. So the overall investments in equity and mutual fund goes down. So obviously it has a negative relationship. If interest rates are high in the economy, then obviously mutual fund and stock market both will attract lower capital, lower amount of fresh capital. Simple logic. As far as microfinance is concerned, see, microfinance typically lends the lowest segment of the society, and basically the interest rates on microfinance are in any case higher than normal rates at which bank is giving a loan. See, right now, if I go to a bank, I will get a housing loan at 6.8%. But the issue is that in India, we have a very large chunk of population which is not eligible to take loans from the bank. And that is why they go to NBFC or microfinance institute, which basically gives them loan, but on an average interest rates of 18 to 24%. So if overall interest rates in the economy are low as of now, then microfinance, which was earlier charging 18%, right now may charge 12%. But even then, the rate charged by microfinance and NBFC will be much higher than a traditional bank.
Right, thank you. So he has a follow-up question. Can Bitcoin affect our economy if the Bitcoin price rises?
No, basically, as far as Bitcoin is concerned, see, please understand only the ultra and high net worth individuals are trading in that. So obviously, it does not, it will not affect our economy. That is one. And second, basically, is Bitcoin prices, they will also not be able to affect economy because only the neo-rich class is basically trading in that. It is nowhere close to a common man's product.
Thank you, sir. There's a question from Mohammad Imran Khan. He wants to know, can you please briefly tell about the face value of shares? What importance does it hold? Normally, normally face value is always
10
rupees
rupees.
10 or rupees 100, whereas the
Yes.
current market price of share is mostly more than that.
Yes. See, basically, if I explain in a very simple thing, Mohammed sir, then the moment when the company is formed, the original shares will typically have a face value of 10 or 100, whatever the promoter have decided. But after say 10 years of working, when the company goes for an IPO, it raises capital, it will get itself valued based on their current earnings and other things. So obviously, the market price pursued or the valuation done by merchant banker will be at a much higher price. Correct, will be at a much higher price. So when you analyze the thing at a higher price, obviously the market price will be more than the face value. If I put it very simply, see today, if the example, if Reliance Industries has a book value of say 530 rupees, and if Reliance shuts down and your demat has 100 shares, so basically you will get book value multiplied by 100 shares. That is what you get back. So that is the current book value, and book value is net worth divided by total number of shares. Face value is the original value of the share when the company issues the share or when the company is formed.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. So there's a question. We will now be taking just last two questions. And the one that we have, I can see is, do you see the government key banks like SBI, PNB, Canara, Bank of Baroda, etc., can be in place to divest in near future?
No, see, basically, as far as, see, please understand that as far as PSU banks were concerned, there were originally 27 banks. Then out of those 27 banks, government has already merged them and reduced the figure to 12. Correct. Now, as of now, there are 12 major PSU banks. So what I typically feel is that now government will try to consolidate and improve the working of these banks rather than privatize them or disturb them. That would be the scenario.
Thanks very much. And the last question of the day, actually, is one Mr. Mubin Khan who attended yesterday's session also, but he was traveling, so he was unable
Okay,
to
no problem.
ask. He has two questions. He said Dr. Srivas had mentioned last week about the insurance in case of broker default
Or
being
up
up
to 15 lakhs. Yes, yes.
to 50 lakhs. Is this on cash or does it include cash plus stocks? Because
No,
shares,
it includes basically both. See, if a broker defaults and if your trading account had 7 lakh rupees, cash balance, and basically if there was 3 lakh rupees share lying in your demat, so 7 plus 3, 10. So basically you are eligible to get that entire 10 lakh rupees because it is less than the threshold limit of 15 lakhs. So it includes stocks also. It's a cumulative limit of 15 lakhs.
all right. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Srinivas, it's been a great time that you have spent with us and you have enlightened us on the monetary policies. The next, for the sake of participants, please note that the next session that we have next Thursday on 25th of March, it will be on commodity markets.
Yes, that's a very interesting one.
Right. So Dr. Srinivas will enlighten us on that as well.
Yes,
And
yes, sure.
please note that in the chat I have shared the WhatsApp group link. So all of you who would like to get regular updates and input from Dr. Srinivas and ask him any queries, you all can join that group. So the invite has been shared. And with this, I call our session day because Dr. Srinivas attends multiple sessions during the day and he holds multiple webinars. So Dr. Srinivas,